marriage, on my relationship with the kids, that have caused enough pain for my family. I'm gonna have to live with it the rest of my life.
Arnold Schwarzenegger has finally opened up about what happened behind closed doors with Maria Shriver, and the reality was far more shocking than most people ever imagined. On September 27, 1997, Maria Shriver welcomed the couple's fourth child, Christopher, into the world. Just 5 days later, on October 2nd, another baby boy was born. His name was Joseph. The two boys were born less than a week apart, connected by a secret that would stay hidden for years. Maria had no idea. While she was celebrating the arrival of her son, another child connected to Arnold's private actions had entered the world at almost the exact same time. For more than a decade, both boys grew up around the same household environment. They played together, attended family gatherings, shared special occasions, and appeared in countless family memories. What makes this story so unbelievable is that Maria often found herself capturing moments that included both children. Looking back, those photographs would take on an entirely different meaning. At the time, she had no reason to suspect the truth was hiding in plain sight. This was not simply a story about an affair. It became a story about years of secrecy, unanswered questions, and a reality that remained hidden from Maria for a very long time. Every morning, life appeared normal on the surface, while a life-changing secret remained buried beneath it all. The strange part is that Maria sensed something was off long before everything came to light. She did not know the full story, but she later admitted that certain things never quite added up. The feeling lingered in the background for years. To understand why the revelations hit so hard, you first have to understand what Maria had built for herself. She was never someone chasing celebrity attention. Maria Shriver came from one of America's most famous families. She was the niece of President John F. Kennedy and the daughter of Eunice Kennedy Shriver, the founder of the Special Olympics. But Maria did not rely on her family name. She worked to create her own path. As a journalist for NBC News, she covered major world events and earned respect throughout the industry. By the late 1980s, many people viewed her as one of the network's brightest rising stars. Arnold's story could not have been more different. He arrived in America from Austria with enormous ambitions. First, he became one of the most successful bodybuilders ever. Then, he transformed himself into a Hollywood superstar. His journey seemed almost impossible, yet he kept finding ways to reinvent himself. The two first met in 1977 during a charity tennis event organized by Maria's mother. Their personalities were completely different. Maria preferred a quieter, more grounded life, while Arnold was known for his larger-than-life confidence and relentless drive. Somehow, those differences pulled them together instead of pushing them apart. They married on April 26, 1986, in Hyannisport. The ceremony attracted major public attention. Powerful figures from media, entertainment, and politics were there. Names like Oprah Winfrey, Andy Warhol, and Diane Sawyer were connected to the celebration, while Grace Jones performed during the festivities. It was one of the most talked-about weddings of its era. Over the following years, they welcomed 4 children: Catherine in 1989, Christina in 1991, Patrick in 1993, and Christopher in 1997. As their family expanded, Maria gradually stepped back from her broadcasting career to focus more on family life and support Arnold's growing political ambitions. When Arnold became governor of California in 2003, Maria took on the role of First Lady of California. She championed programs for young people, promoted Alzheimer's awareness, and became known for her charitable work. Through every public appearance, she projected strength, professionalism, and stability. To the outside world, they looked unstoppable. The famous actor and the respected journalist, the self-made immigrant and the member of America's most famous political family. Their marriage appeared to be one of Hollywood's rare success stories. For 25 years, they built a life together, 4 children, countless public appearances, a reputation that seemed untouchable. Yet behind the gates of their Brentwood home, problems were developing that would eventually change everything. The warning signs did not begin in the late 1990s. Some of the difficulties stretched back much earlier. In 1985, while filming Red Sonja in Italy, Arnold became involved in a relationship with co-star Brigitte Nielsen. At the time, he was already engaged to Maria. Years later, Brigitte spoke publicly about the situation, explaining that she was unaware of the engagement when the relationship began. She described believing that she had found someone special. When Maria learned about what had happened, she faced a difficult decision. Instead of walking away, she chose to move forward with the marriage. She believed mistakes could be left in the past. She believed the future would be different. That choice would become an important part of the story years later. Because when the later revelations surfaced, many people looked back and realized this was not the first major challenge the relationship had faced. Earlier wounds had already been forgiven, and that history added another layer to everything that followed. One of the central figures in the later controversy was Mildred Baena, a longtime household employee who had worked with the family for many years. She was trusted by everyone in the home and became a familiar presence in the family's daily life. According to Arnold's later account, a relationship developed between them during the late 1990s. At the same time, Maria was expecting Christopher. The situation remained hidden for years, with very few people aware of the full truth. What followed was not an immediate disclosure. Instead, the secret remained concealed as life continued moving forward. Over time, reports emerged that Arnold provided financial support connected to Joseph's upbringing, including educational expenses and other assistance. Reports also stated that a home was purchased for Mildred years later, shortly before the story became public knowledge. For years, the secret stayed buried. Then, when the truth finally surfaced, it would trigger one of the most dramatic and talked-about family scandals Hollywood had ever seen. Everything was kept hidden for years, carefully separated from the life Maria believed she was living. The relationship had ended long before the truth came out, but the secret itself never disappeared. Day after day, year after year, reality remained buried beneath the surface. Then another major challenge arrived. In 2003, during Arnold Schwarzenegger's campaign for governor of California, multiple women came forward with allegations involving inappropriate behavior that they said stretched back over many years. The story exploded across national headlines just days before the election. Maria stood beside him through the storm. She came from a family that knew exactly what public scandals looked like. She understood the pressure, the scrutiny, and the relentless attention from the media. Even so, she publicly supported her husband and asked people to trust her judgment. She gave interviews. She joined campaign events. She defended the man she had spent years building a life with. Her reputation was tied to his, and she put that reputation on the line while standing in front of cameras across California. Meanwhile, another secret remained hidden in the background, one that would eventually change everything. As the years passed, people close to the family have said Maria began noticing things she could not easily explain away. As Joseph grew older, certain similarities became harder to ignore. The resemblance seemed more noticeable with each passing year. The facial features, the expressions, the mannerisms, the physical build. Friends later claimed that during family gatherings, Maria would occasionally look at Joseph and then look at Arnold, feeling an uncomfortable sense that something was not right. She did not have answers yet, but the questions were becoming impossible to silence. Anyone who has ever had a gut feeling that refused to go away understands the situation. Sometimes your instincts pick up on details long before your mind is willing to connect them. That uneasy feeling can linger for years, quietly sitting in the background while you try to convince yourself everything is fine. Family events became more complicated in hindsight. School functions, celebrations, birthdays, and gatherings brought everyone together. Looking back, those moments would later take on a completely different meaning. What once seemed ordinary would eventually be viewed through an entirely new lens. People close to the situation have suggested that Maria noticed small details over time. A conversation that felt unusual. A familiar look exchanged across a room. Moments that seemed insignificant individually but became harder to ignore when viewed together. None of those things proved anything on their own, yet they continued to raise questions. For years, those questions remained unanswered. Then came the moment when everything finally came into the open. In early 2011, shortly after Arnold completed his time as governor of California, the couple entered marriage counseling. During one of the sessions, Maria directly asked the question that had been weighing on her mind. She wanted a clear answer once and for all. According to Arnold's later account, he confirmed the truth during that conversation. In his memoir, Total Recall, he described the moment as one of the most painful experiences of his life. He admitted that he had carried the secret for years and that revealing it felt overwhelming. But from Maria's perspective, the damage had already been done. The truth may not have been spoken aloud until that moment, but its impact had been building quietly for a very long time. On May 17, 2011, the story became public when major news outlets reported the revelation. Within hours, the news spread around the world. Television programs, newspapers, entertainment shows, and online platforms were all discussing the same headline. Suddenly, a deeply private family crisis became global news. Maria found herself surrounded by intense media attention while trying to process one of the most difficult periods of her life. Every camera seemed focused on her reaction. Every headline examined the details of a situation she was still trying to understand herself. At the same time, the family faced the challenge of processing the news together. Personal matters that would normally remain private became topics of public discussion almost overnight. The pressure was enormous, and there was no way to escape the spotlight. What made the situation even harder was the realization that years of memories now looked different. Moments that once felt simple and joyful suddenly carried questions that had never existed before. Family photographs, holiday celebrations, birthdays, anniversaries, and milestones all became part of a larger story she never expected to uncover. In her 2025 book, I Am Maria, Maria described the period after the revelation as one of profound grief and emotional upheaval. She wrote openly about the fear, confusion, and heartbreak that followed. It was not simply the end of a marriage. It was the collapse of a version of reality she had trusted for decades. She described sleepless nights, overwhelming sadness, and the physical weight that emotional pain can place on a person. Anyone who has experienced major betrayal knows it affects more than emotions alone. The stress reaches every part of life and can feel impossible to escape. For Maria, the hardest moments were not the headlines or television coverage. They were the quiet moments alone, reflecting on years of memories and trying to understand how everything had unfolded. Looking back through the timeline, revisiting family milestones, and connecting pieces of the story became an emotional process that took years to navigate. That is what major betrayal often looks like in real life. Not dramatic tabloid covers or flashy headlines, but private moments spent trying to make sense of something that changed your world. The cameras eventually move on, but the personal journey continues long after public attention fades. On July 1, 2011, Maria filed for divorce after 25 years of marriage. What followed was a lengthy legal process that stretched across nearly a decade. The proceedings took years to finalize, and the divorce was officially completed in December 2021, bringing one of Hollywood's most talked-about chapters to a formal close. One reason the divorce took so long to finalize was the massive amount of assets involved. By that point, Arnold Schwarzenegger had built an empire worth hundreds of millions of dollars. There were luxury properties across California, including the famous Brentwood estate. There were movie earnings, long-running royalty payments, investment accounts, business ventures, and decades of financial deals tied to one of Hollywood's biggest success stories. This was not a simple situation where two people signed papers and walked away. The wealth connected to the marriage stretched across entertainment, real estate, fitness businesses, and numerous other ventures that had been built over more than 25 years. Untangling all of it was a huge undertaking. California's community property laws meant that assets accumulated during the marriage would generally be divided equally. The real challenge was not deciding who deserved what. The challenge was sorting through an enormous financial network that had grown for decades and touched nearly every corner of Arnold's career. By the time everything was finally completed, years had passed. Life had moved on. Their oldest daughter, Catherine, had already entered a new chapter of her own life, becoming both a wife and a mother. In many ways, the divorce lasted longer than the scandal that triggered it. What happened next surprised a lot of people. Many expected a bitter public battle. They expected explosive interviews, dramatic accusations, and endless headlines. Instead, Maria took a completely different path. She chose not to spend years attacking Arnold in public. She avoided turning private family matters into a media spectacle. Rather than focusing on revenge, she focused on protecting her children and rebuilding her own future. That decision earned respect from many people who watched the situation unfold. Maria poured her energy into causes she cared deeply about. She expanded her work supporting Alzheimer's awareness, continued advocating for women's issues, launched new media projects, and wrote books that reflected her personal growth and experiences. Step by step, she built a new chapter that stood on its own. Most importantly, she reclaimed an identity that was never dependent on being someone's wife. Long before Arnold entered her life, she had established herself as a respected journalist and public figure. After the divorce, she continued proving that her accomplishments belonged entirely to her. Meanwhile, Arnold faced a different challenge. He had to work on rebuilding trust within his family. That process was not automatic, and it certainly was not guaranteed. Relationships damaged by painful revelations require time, patience, and effort to repair. The situation affected everyone differently. Their children were forced to process events that became public almost overnight. Yet through it all, Maria remained a steady presence in their lives. The bond she shared with her children never wavered, and that connection became one of the strongest parts of her recovery story. Arnold has spoken openly in recent years about his regrets. In his memoir and later interviews, including his 2023 documentary project, he described the affair as the greatest personal mistake of his life. He has repeatedly acknowledged the pain his actions caused and admitted that success in business, movies, and politics did not automatically translate into success at home. Joseph Baena eventually built a career of his own, pursuing acting and bodybuilding while creating his own path in the public eye. Arnold has publicly recognized him as his son, and their relationship has become well known over the years. But Maria's story is not really about Arnold anymore. It is about what happened after the heartbreak. It is about rebuilding when everything you believed in suddenly changes. It is about finding your footing after one of the most public personal crises imaginable. Today, Maria Shriver is known as a best-selling author, producer, advocate, and grandmother. Through her family, her charitable work, and her professional accomplishments, she has built a life that exists completely on its own terms. The woman who once faced one of the most painful chapters of her life in the spotlight emerged stronger than many expected. What stands out most is that she never launched public attacks against Arnold, not during the divorce, not in interviews, not in her books. Instead, she allowed actions, growth, and time to tell the story. During an appearance on Oprah's podcast in 2025, she simply said, "I'm in a good place with Arnold, and that's really important to me." That short statement said more than pages of criticism ever could. Arnold's own admissions, regrets, and public reflections told the rest of the story. After 25 years of marriage, 4 children, years of challenges, and one of Hollywood's most talked-about scandals, Maria chose something few people expected. She chose to heal, move forward, and build a life defined not by betrayal, but by resilience. And maybe that is the part of this story that people miss when they focus only on the scandal. The headlines were massive. The revelations shocked Hollywood. For months, it seemed like every television show, magazine cover, and entertainment report was talking about the same thing. People debated who was right, who was wrong, and how such a secret could stay hidden for so many years. But eventually, the news cycle moved on. The cameras went somewhere else. The headlines disappeared. For Maria Shriver, however, life did not magically return to normal when the public stopped talking about it. Real life is not measured by news coverage, it is measured by the quiet moments afterward. The mornings when you wake up and have to rebuild your confidence. The evenings when you have to figure out who you are without the future you once imagined. That is the part nobody sees. For years, Maria had been viewed as one half of one of America's most recognizable couples. Together, they represented power, influence, fame, and success. Their marriage looked untouchable from the outside. Yet when that image shattered, Maria faced a choice. She could allow the betrayal to define the rest of her life, or she could write a completely new chapter. She chose the second option. Instead of becoming trapped by bitterness, she focused on growth. Instead of fighting public battles, she focused on her family. Instead of letting one painful chapter become her entire identity, she continued building the life she wanted. That decision may have been the strongest thing she ever did. What makes her story remarkable is that she never needed revenge to prove her strength. In a world where public feuds generate attention and headlines, Maria chose a different path. She understood something many people do not learn until much later in life. Healing is not about winning against someone else. It is about finding peace within yourself. Meanwhile, Arnold was left to confront the consequences of choices he could never undo. No amount of success could erase what happened. Not the movies, not the political victories, not the awards, not the wealth. When he speaks about this chapter today, there is a clear recognition that some mistakes stay with you forever. That does not mean life stopped for either of them. In many ways, both moved forward. Their children grew into adults, new relationships formed, families expanded, grandchildren arrived. The future kept moving, whether anyone was ready for it or not. And perhaps that is one of the biggest lessons from this entire story. No matter how devastating a betrayal may be, life continues. The pain feels overwhelming in the moment. It can feel impossible to imagine a future beyond it. Yet day by day, people rebuild. Piece by piece, they create something new. Sometimes that new life ends up stronger than the one that came before. For Maria, that new life became centered around her own passions, her family, and the causes she cared about most. She continued writing, she continued advocating, she continued using her voice to help others. Most importantly, she continued moving forward. The woman who once sat alone trying to make sense of everything eventually found her footing again. She found purpose again. She found happiness again. That journey did not happen overnight. It took years, it took patience, it took resilience, but she got there. Looking back now, it is easy to focus on the shocking details, the secret, the lies, the years of unanswered questions. Those details will always be part of the story. They are impossible to ignore, but they are not the entire story. The entire story is about what happened after the truth came out. It is about a family forced to navigate an incredibly difficult situation under the glare of worldwide attention. It is about children finding their way through unexpected circumstances. It is about accountability, consequences, forgiveness, and growth. Most of all, it is about survival. Because when everything fell apart, Maria Shriver did not disappear. She did not allow herself to be remembered only as a victim of someone else's decisions. She rebuilt her life, protected her family, and continued moving forward with dignity. That may not create the loudest headlines, but it is often the most powerful ending. Today, years after the scandal first shocked the world, the story feels very different. The anger has faded. The court battles are over. The headlines are gone. What remains are the lessons, the consequences, and the people who had to live through it all. In the end, this was never just a story about a Hollywood marriage falling apart. It was a story about what happens when trust is broken, when secrets finally come to light, and when someone chooses to rebuild instead of letting heartbreak define the rest of their life. And maybe that is why Maria Shriver's story continues to resonate with so many people. Not because of the scandal itself, but because of what she did afterward. When faced with one of the most painful chapters imaginable, she kept going, she kept growing, and she proved that sometimes the strongest response is not revenge, not anger, and not public warfare. Sometimes the strongest response is simply moving forward and refusing to let the worst moment of your life become the final chapter. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more fascinating stories about the lives, triumphs, and controversies surrounding some of the world's biggest stars. And let us know your thoughts in the comments below.